What's up, YouTube? It is the dead of night, but I'm here hustling to make this YouTube video for you to help you achieve your dream life. Today we're going to talk about how self-love and mastering self-love can help you achieve all the life goals you have, cross out everything on your bucket list, and make you richer. Now your first initial reaction to this might be, how the heck is this woo-woo spiritual topic of self-love going to help me with making more money or, crossing off bucket list items or any of that stuff? And that's a very, valid question. Now, I always love very rigorous, science-backed or evidence-based answers. That's one of the themes to all of the content I release. And this will be no different. So, unlike other self-help gurus who kind of stay very woo-woo and spiritual and new age with nothing to back it up, I go straight to the evidence. And I have a really strong piece of evidence to give you. Of course, there's plenty, but this one is very modern and recent. I was watching Gary Vaynerchuk's latest vlogs, and this guy runs a $200+ million social media marketing agency in New York, and he was interviewing Nicky Jam. Nicky Jam is a young, new Latin American musician who recently crossed over 1 billion views on one of his music videos. That's billion with a B. And they were having a meeting and interview, basically where Gary was just kind of answering this guy's questions and trying to give advice to this guy as he progressed and grew in the music industry. And halfway through this 45-minute video interview Q&A, Nicky Jam and Gary Vaynerchuk start getting deep about self-love. They talk about its importance. Nicky Jam, he had 2 drug addicts for parents, plus his mom was a prostitute, and they were absentee parents as well. So he had a lot of resentment and self-hatred for his parents, for himself, and self-love, loving yourself, as Justin Bieber says, is something that wasn't natural for him. And eventually he learned to let go, and it wasn't easy because he was also overweight back in those days. And it was really crazy how he went from that to ultimately learning to love himself, and that led to him letting go of excuses and complaints and resentment, and really taking control of his own life and stopping the blame of why he wasn't succeeding and why life was so tough, and finally just starting to take action on improving his life, which led him over time with patience to where he is today. I believe he's in his early to mid 30s right now. So it still takes patience and dedication before you succeed. So my point here is that self-love is one of those core concepts that many of you can and should use to really start triggering the change in your life. Oftentimes the trigger is really about taking full control of your life, knowing that life is tough and sometimes you get dealt a horrible hand. I've been dealt horrible hands in my own ways, and I have to deal with my own different versions of self-love. I didn't have prostitute parents, but I did have Asian immigrant parents, and that own set of problems with that and other issues, being skinny, being nerdy, and so forth, that I have to deal with. So self-love comes in many different forms. We all have insecurities. Gary Vaynerchuk, as well as many other dating coaches, they go deep about how every person out there has their own set of issues. You have RSD Tyler, or Owen, who also talks about this. I don't agree with a lot of their dating advice, but I do agree with the fact that most people have a whole set of issues. And they both said, Gary and Owen, they say almost everyone has their insecurities. They're too tall, too short, too ginger, too white, too poor, too rich, too athletic, not athletic enough, too nerdy, too popular, not popular enough. Successful in high school but not in college. Unsuccessful in high school socially but academically successful. Too fat, too skinny, too Dominican Republic, too Chinese, too ginger, too Irish. There's always something that you can pinpoint. And they went on about this, and Nicky Jam, he says, you know what, the prettiest people are the most insecure. So it's incredible how if you want to, with confirmation bias, there's always something to latch onto, and that's almost universal no matter which demographic you're talking about. And so with self-love, it's not something that comes natural. There's one speech that I've watched countless times by Cara Delevingne, one of the top supermodels. She has like 55 million Instagram followers, and her whole speech, which was only 16 to 17 minutes long, if you include the introduction, really goes deep about all the problems she faced despite having all this external success. She was flying around the world and hanging out with all these celebrities from Taylor Swift to Rihanna, but deep down she was having all sorts of issues. She had deep insecurity, and because she was measuring her rejections as a model as her own self-worth. And then she didn't feel like she deserved it all and that she just got lucky. There's another self-worth issue there. And then there's all these other things that she had to deal with. There's this like depression she had, even though she had all this success that she had to deal with. Then she had this issue of overwork and overstress because she didn't have the self-love to value herself or consider the fact that she should give herself a break. And therefore, when she first blew up as a model because of her eyebrows and being on a certain few of modeling events that really skyrocketed her success, she never gave herself a break. And just like Ariana Huffington and many others, she overworked herself so much. For her, so much so that she developed an illness called psoriasis, which caused her to have huge giant warts, welts all over her. And instead of getting treatment, her modeling agency just tried to cover the symptoms rather than prescribing what was truly necessary, which was just rest and recovery and all this stuff. And they just pumped her with cortisol at the hospital so that she could keep going and working. And she didn't know that she could give herself a rest. No one told her to give herself a rest, so she overworked, which induced this. So just like with Ariana Huffington, where she worked so hard that she one day collapsed from exhaustion and wrote a whole book called The Sleep Revolution on the importance of sleep, self-love extends beyond just about self-esteem and rising above insecurities. And it extends to finally taking hold of yourself and knowing that you're a worthy person, so that you can stop blaming yourself and having excuses, so you can take over the world by taking control of your life. But it's also about loving your own body no matter what you look like, so that you can embrace yourself and stop trying to be someone you're not, because you're not happy with who you are. So it goes into approval seeking and validation, but it also goes into loving yourself in the form of giving yourself free time, relaxation time, time to decompress, time to do something you enjoy, even if it's completely unproductive, regardless of if it's going to help someone else think of you in a better way. It goes into approval seeking, and this is covered in Dr. Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, where nice guys are constantly seeking approval from others and always managing anxiety, so much so that they never do anything for their own enjoyment on a weekly or daily basis, which is another huge problem. And then finally, self-love goes into what you put into your body, and as simple as what you eat. This is something that Will Smith, thank goodness for Will Smith. Will Smith recently, a few months ago, finally got onto YouTube and social media and Instagram, and he's finally releasing success advice, something that I've been dying for from him because there hasn't been that much. And now we have evidence from Will Smith addressing this concept of self-love. And he goes on, he has this Instagram story which goes on for a couple minutes, pinned to his Instagram profile, only viewable on your phone's app. If you go on desktop and view his Instagram, for some reason they don't pin the Instagram stories to his profile on desktop, so you have to view it through mobile. But he has this whole spiel on self-love that you can check out on your own time. But one of his big points is just how important self-love is to your own success in life. If you love yourself, this is a cliche analogy that they use, but when the airplane crashes, they tell you to put the air mask on yourself first before you help children, because if you can't breathe, how are you supposed to help others? The more that you can take care of yourself, the more that you can help others. So in a similar way, take care of yourself. If you feed yourself the right foods, you'll succeed. And so it's about self-love on the micro, the tiny things, as well as the macro, the big things. Will goes on to say, like, hey, if you love yourself, it's about telling yourself, hey, I love you too much to let you eat that junk food. And when I first saw that a few months ago, despite me being a personal development junkie and seeing all these different areas of self-love from TEDx talkers who are researchers like Brene Brown, who studied vulnerability and self-love for decades in the lab, I still never saw that perspective. So there's always lessons learned. Will Smith, he explains self-love in a way where it's as simple as what you eat, and how refraining from eating bad foods is a form of self-love for your future. And I never thought of it that way. I always thought restraining from eating junk food and eating healthy food is all just about discipline and suffering so that you can benefit in the long term. But I never looked at it in the form of, hey, it's also about loving yourself in the short term and long term. I forgot about the love and the value it's that act is doing, and I just focused on the suffering and the pain and the discipline necessary to achieve your goals. But that's deep as well, and just understanding that and using it can help you optimize the small things as eating, because it becomes more of a positive in the short term. So this rant has gone on long enough. Hopefully you saw enough evidence from successful people to see that self-love doesn't have to be a woo-woo topic. And it was until now that I really dove deep into this and made a video and piece of content on this, because since up until now it has been one of those new agey woo-woo personal development topics that doesn't have as much scientific backing. But now, thanks to people like Brene Brown, who has released countless books on self-love and other topics, and has decades of her own scientific research experience to back it up, we can finally get going on this and really see some benefit, especially with what a time to be alive, with people like A-list celebrities like Will Smith, who has been successful in the game for so long, finally coming out and talking about this. We have some evidence to back this concept up. So whether you're a student or you're an elderly man, old, skinny, fat, tall, short, inexperienced, dumb, smart, whatever, you have room to improve your self-love, get rid of those insecurities, and improve your life by giving yourself the love that you've been neglecting, and stop beating yourself up, because nowadays young people more than ever, they're beating themselves up a little bit too much because they're comparing themselves too much to what's bombarded at them, not even realizing that these are the top 1% of the 1%, and it's not a fair comparison. Thanks for watching, and I'm struggling with it just like you, so it's a battle. I'll see you on the other side. Peace.